So you were saying something about soup.
Yeah, the soup that you got here. Well, you know, during the break, it looks as though they heated it up a bit, but it's still it's a bit salty.
It's been out since last night. Well, come on now.
It's a bit salty.
Yeah.
So sometimes, in order to make it less salty, well, you put a little bit more hot water in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Should be fine.
Yeah.
The point I'm trying to make is when you have a capitalist society.
Yeah.
Sometimes. The greed factor, you know, takes the taste out of the soup.
Yeah.
And, you know, you need to have a social program or two, all right, to offset that so that, you know, the soup is going to taste a lot better. And it's going to be much more beneficial for everybody that eats the soup because, you know, too much salt is not good for you.
And there's nothing better than a good bowl of soup.
No.
True that.
Yeah, for sure. So you got Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Socialist, who seeks a government for all classes of people rather than just the billionaire class. That's important. He's a fighter for fair trade agreements. I mean, he's not against trade, but it's got to be a fair trade. It's time for the major corporations to reinvest in the American workers and create decent jobs here. All right, we got to be producing here now. We've already primed the economies of a lot of the third world countries. They've now have what they need to take off and prosper and to be self-sufficient. So now we have to look at our people once again.
Now, we're talking off camera before we came back on about a company out. I forget. I think it's in Seattle. I'm not sure, but it's a company that the CEO decided that in incremental steps within a couple of years, all the employees in the company will be at a $70,000 salary, which is that's a fairly good salary, at least for an individual, and in a lot of cases for an entire family, to take care of the needs of an entire family. And this has gone. It's begun the process of amping up their salaries. And of course, what a lot of people would tell you intuitively that once the employees have a guaranteed salary, that they're gonna dog it. They're gonna say, well, you know, I've got my salary. I don't have to work as hard. I don't have to think as hard on the job. I don't have to pay as much attention to what I'm doing. And yet, as the salaries have gone up incrementally, the company is doing much better. People are buying into the company. It's a credit card payment company, and the consumer is buying in. The company's stock is going up. The value of the company is going up. The performance of the company is going up, rather than down. So maybe everybody's not buying into the notion of I want to work harder because I'm getting fairly compensated, but apparently. If not all, certainly most are, because the company's becoming much more efficient and doing a better job, and the consumer's responding accordingly.
It's very similar to the tenure question in the teaching profession.
Yes.
You're going to get some teachers that'll feel, now's my chance to slack off, whereas others will be motivated by the very fact that they have tenure to continue producing and improving. So, this question, it's you can take it to another level.
Yeah.
With the innovation of robotics, the technology, eventually the need for human labor
certainly manual labor has been decreased.
It will diminish significantly, and then it's what are we going to do? The actual thought of an annual wage is going to have to be back up on the table again.
Yep.
And that annual wage is not going to necessarily put such a severe burden on the economic situation of a nation because of the amount of production that would be generated from the robotics, the technology, and whatever other innovations in the future we can expect. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves on this one. Back to Bernie Sanders, a man.
Yeah, why Bernie Sanders? Why Bernie Sanders?
He's honest.
That's
he
a good
speaks
start.
freely.
That's a very
Bernie
good start.
Bernie Sanders doesn't deny climate change and global warming. he has already worked with Barbara Boxer on a pollution reduction act. He's also against the Keystone Pipeline. Now, it took Hillary a long time to rethink on the Keystone Pipeline, but it was a no-brainer for Bernie Sanders because he considers climate change to be the most serious threat to the nation. And if you think about it, he's right. I mean, the country is going to be in pretty sad shape if we're all fighting over who's going to get water.
Yeah.
Now, when you have an appreciation of this problem, climate change, rather than a Keystone Pipeline that's going to be pulling oil from one end to the other, they could be creating pipelines that could move certain resources, water for one, from one end of the country to the other end of the country in order to balance out the problems that climate change could be creating, along with doing something about the greenhouse effect.
Provide water as needed, where needed, the same way that we do with electricity now, where electricity is generated in limited numbers of areas and then gets sent via wire to wherever it's needed. The same thing could happen with water. It's a good point.
So it's part of the infrastructure. You got the roads. You got the various pipelines. You got electricity. You got water, communication, and he's also a fighter when it comes to increasing benefits for veterans. He and John McCain had passed some legislation that strongly benefits the veterans.
And on a lot of occasions, John McCain does a lot of good stuff. And there are times when he gets a little crazy. In my mind's eye, like with the notion that we should jump in on the side of the folks in Syria that turned out to be ISIS, and give them weaponry, and did his photo op with them, and then one of those oops moments where the folks that he was having us jump in on the side of turned out to be ISIS. But he does a lot of good stuff, and he certainly has the needs of our nation's veterans in his heart, as does Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, not a veteran, but certainly understands and recognizes what the importance of veterans and what they do for our nation.
Yeah, it's a tremendous amount of.
And he and McCain worked on some very important legislation to help solve a lot of the problems that we had in our VA hospitals.
Well, it's veteran. I mean, these people, they've given up portions of their lives for the American people.
Absolutely.
And they deserve consideration. But the thing about Bernie Sanders is he's able to work across the aisle. All right? He's able to meet with the opposite side and get things done. That is important, especially in the gridlock situation that we found ourselves in the past.
And he's loath to insulting people. He does not insult people.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
Like a certain other candidate that whose name begins with the. I guess that's his nickname, the Donald.
Yeah, the Donald.
Who takes every opportunity to insult. He's misogynistic whenever he gets an opportunity. He insults women. He insults the minorities. He insults immigrants. He's got them all covered.
Well, that's part of his live reality show mentality.
That's the persona. Yeah.
This is Bernie Sanders knows the issues, and he's a true politician. Politician in the sense that he's has an interest in the state.
Yeah.
He was accused of sexism for raising his voice when speaking with Hillary, which is definitely a ridiculous accusation. He was raising his voice because he was trying to make a point regarding the issues. So, it's amazing how the media can attempt to twist and put a spin on things.
They like a good cat fight, or a good dog and cat fight, or a good dog and dog fight. They like this reality show notion that if you can get you can get folks badgering each other, then that makes for good exciting television. But you're right. It's just you need to have our elected officials speak respectfully to one another and work with one another and find solutions that are beneficial to us all.
You know what they do is they tend to capitalize on the coarser elements of human nature. If they can figure out a way to get a little sex in there, okay, some violence and some humor, they feel that's good for ratings. And the reason they're always looking at ratings is because the amount of advertising money they get is based on the ratings, and that advertising money is coming from big money interests, and so they are out. The media is also in the same pocket and
that's all of them. That's CNN, Fox, NBC, CBS, ABC. That's the whole bunch of them that are driven by profits. Now, back in the day, back in the 60s, you had the nightly news. That was basically our visual source of news, and they delivered a straightforward look at the day's events. They weren't concerned about revenue generation because they were a loss leader. If you liked the news show on a channel, you didn't have your remote to change a channel in an instant. But if you liked the news you saw on a channel, you generally stayed through the rest of the evening's entertainment on that channel.
You did.
That was the benefit to the station. So they tried to deliver a good news report, good honest news report that focused on issues.
Right. Then all of a sudden they decided, well, listen, we've got to keep them from tuning here and tuning there, so we're going to have to exploit them, and we're going to have to take a sensational approach. Yeah. So, like I say, if they can figure out a way to get a little sex or a little violence into the mix, they felt that would keep you from flicking because they've already conditioned your propensity toward the coarser elements of human nature. But that's all psychology, and that's what they need to know. But we got to know what's happening. We got to know. Hey, wait a minute! Look, they're trying to push that button. Hold on. There's no need for us to fall into that trap.
Right. I think that's the point well made.
He's got a realistic approach to gun control.
Yep.
That issue has come up. It's come up a lot, and
Yeah, he voted against the Brady bill.
He did. Okay. But he also voted to ban certain types of assault weapons.
Absolutely.
Okay. He advocated closing the gun show loopholes.
Absolutely.
Universal background checks. All right. No guns to criminals. People with mental problems. People in abusive family situations should not be allowed to have guns.
Situations where you don't need to have a gun so easily accessible when tempers are flaring.
But he takes a realistic approach to the issue. All right, he recognizes that there's a difference where guns can be used in an acceptable fashion and where guns can be used and abused and lead to deaths. Urban areas require high limited use.
And Chicago, with quick shout out to good friend of the show, Marty Heiser, with his own show, the Marty Heiser Show, loves to talk about Chicago, about violent crime in Chicago, how a city that has strong anti-gun legislation, strong gun legislation, safety legislation, that still has a high rate of crime. Well, we talk about Chicago as the point that makes the city that makes our point that you should not have people with the ability to go to these gun shows, buy an armload of Uzis or AK-47s or whatever weapon you can kill the most people with in the shortest period of time. You shouldn't be able to buy those, take them into Chicago and sell them for a profit. You should not be able to. Nobody should be able to go to a gun show and make a purchase which is clearly profit-driven to turn around and sell those guns into a situation where they're going to cause mayhem.
So you need to have some kind of regulation. You got to have some kind of control. And Bernie Sanders recognizes that. He also recognizes the fact that people living in rural areas, they like to hunt.
Yeah.
They like to target shoot. They're responsible gun owners.
Absolutely.
Okay? And they should not necessarily be victimized by rules and regulations that unfairly infringe upon their rights.
Right.
So there's a balance here. He recognizes it.
But keep in mind that that legislation's never been put forward by anybody that would infringe on a person's ability to own a shotgun or something of that nature for target practice or for hunting. They've never had anyone, feel the burn. They never had anybody, go after their guns. It's not the regular guns. It's these high-powered. Now, back in the 30s, back in the days of gangsters and robbing banks, we, as a country, passed a law that made
the Tommy gun.
Made the Tommy gun, the Thompson submachine gun, illegal. Now, why could they accomplish that then? For the very same reason, and we can't accomplish that now with the AK-47 or an Uzi or a gun of that nature.
Well, the NRA
that has no hunting element attached to it. There's no point in hunting.
Well, the National Rifle Association feels that any kind of limitation that could be put on the so-called Second Amendment right is going to somehow or other weaken the ability for people to own firearms and in return affect the industry itself, but which is it's not true.
I hate that slippery slope argument that people use. No matter what the subject matter, you have this slippery slope argument. It's that, well, if we allow them to do that, then what's next? And in the case of guns, it'll be, well, they'll be taking away our pea shooters
during
next.
the Cold War, they had something called the domino effect.
Yes.
Stop them here, because if they go any further, then everything is going to topple down.
Yes.
It's not a necessary cause and effect.
The fear of the unknown, and as you're talking about earlier, the media the corporate media loves to buy in to the sensational nature of that slippery slope effect, and that if this happens, then maybe that'll happen. There's this fear element that if we allow this to happen, which we may think is a good idea, there might be ramifications that we haven't thought about yet.
But we shouldn't belabor it. It's just one other issue. Let me tell you.
Yep.
We spoke about who Bernie Sanders is.
Yep.
Why Bernie Sanders?
Why Bernie Sanders?
Full Medicare to all citizens. Okay? Why not?
Health care that focuses on preventative medicine, so we don't have people belaboring, not having the money to afford a trip to the doctor on a regular basis because they don't have health insurance. And eventually, by avoiding or hoping that a problem will go away, they end up in the emergency room, and that's when it becomes really expensive.
Right. It's a much more intelligent approach. Higher minimum wage. All right.
So people have the opportunity to live, to feed their family, put a roof over their head, transportation to and from work, the things that allow a family unit to function. It's all about the family.
Paid family leave.
Right, for either the mom or the dad, so that children know their parents better than they've come to over the last 50 years or so.
All right, it's going to cost money. It's going to cost money. How? How are we going to get this money? It's going to cut down the war budget in favor of rebuilding America.
Well, it also benefits us after the fact, because if we have time at home with our kids without fear of losing our job, knowing our salary's being taken care of, that means you're going to go back to your job. All the skills that you've learned that benefit your employer are going back in.
They're going back in.
They don't have to hire somebody and train somebody new. They know they've got you coming back at a date certain to come back to work, bring your skills back, benefits a company, stability for you, stability for the company.
And also there'll be more jobs available.
Yep.
Because this whole notion of rebuilding America, taking the war budget and cutting it down.
Yep.
This extensive public work programs. People will be able to find employment. They'll be able to maintain their employment. They'll be able to not worry about situations if they get sick. They know they'll be getting a reasonable wage for their labor. If they need women and men need time for family leave, it's available to them. Okay, control skyrocketing drug prices. All right, this is why Bernie Sanders, okay? Skyrocketing drug prices. Elderly people, they can't afford their medications unless they take enough money out of their limited finances that leaves them with nothing for food. I mean, who needs a society like that? It doesn't have to be.
It's not certainly not Christian. It certainly doesn't jibe with the beliefs of any of the religions or in fact non-religion for our atheists and agnostics in America. Any of the three major religions or any of the other religions in America, it jibes with what we all believe.
Sure. So we changed the corporate tax system. We raise money from, well, that's what he plans on doing. He plans on changing the corporate tax system in order to enact some of these social programs.
Then we talked about that a very tiny 1/10% or of stock trades,
right,
of stock trades that are made that would finance college education for everybody in America.
Why Bernie Sanders?
Public college education. Because the world's it's a more complicated world. We need 16 years of education now, where maybe we once needed 12. We need that extra education to be prepared for 21st century job skills.
Well, he is pushing hard for the it's called that Wall Street transaction tax or Robin Hood tax.
Yeah.
And he's on the speculations and the casino type activities that the Wall Street operators are engaged in. So in order to subsidize this, the free college tuition at the public colleges, so he's looking at ways of arriving at the revenue to enact his programs. And not only that, he's separating himself from the Wall Street big money interests. He's raising money from millions of citizens in small denominations.
Small donations.
And he refuses. He actually refuses to accept funding from Wall Street and the big money PACs. He's warned us. This is the area now.
He warned us back. He warned us back when in 1999 when Congress threw out
Glass-Steagall,
which had been instituted during the fallout from the Depression, which kept banks from doing these types of casino-type transactions.
Right. Yeah. The banks that you save money in, the banks that you borrowed from.
And Lincoln Chafee, you're not off the hook. We don't care if we care that your father was dying at the time, but you came into the Senate and you voted. Now you weren't the only one. Obviously, it was a highly. It was like 98-1. It was something like that. It was a huge overriding vote to turn over Glass-Steagall, to turn out Glass-Steagall, but that was the beginning.
Okay, it's possible that they didn't even recognize the impact of doing such a thing. Well, now they do know, and it's only intelligent to reinstall it for that matter, because there's no reason for banks to be doing the kind of risky activities that investment companies and hedge companies do, and then expect to be bailed out by the American taxpayer because it's FDIC insured. Come on.
And real conservatives, that is people that understand finances from a conservative standpoint. which is the genesis of the term conservative, we understood then, but we also understand now that financial working should be done in a conservative fashion rather than this risky investing in risky casino type investing.
They have to be separated.
Yeah.
But that's going to be some fight. I mean,
those of you that understand differential calculus, you know what a derivative is. You know what differential is. You understand what that's all about. This differential buying, but gambling on not on a stock's value, not on the value of a company, but gambling on which way a stock is going to go, a tick this way or a tick that way, and you're betting on the change in value rather than the actual value. It's
banks are not supposed to be doing that kind of stuff.
It's just bad. It's gambling, and we shouldn't have it.
No.
In
the thing
in our
that
economic system.
This is the big one. The foreign policy.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I think most pundits feel that Bernie Sanders, he needs to strengthen his foreign policy. Mm-hmm. He's got to highlight the dangers of what Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex. He's got to do that. He's got to somehow or other let the American people know that war.
No. Wrap it up. We got a few seconds left, and the folks at the other table, there's people ready to take our table and have their meal.
War is the last option. Mm-hmm. Okay, diplomacy has to be the major concern of the American people. We only go to war.
Chime in, folks. Contact us. Look at us up on YouTube, on Facebook, and with that, have a good day.